Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. Is there anyone here for the first time? Anyone joining us for the first time? You can just go ahead and unmute. I guess everybody's been here. Lisa, I don't know you too well, but hello. I think you've been here, right? You want to just tell us a little bit about who you are, how you found us?
Sure. I found you all because Shinko Roshi gave a talk, and I actually met Seisen Roshi a long time ago and did session over at Sweetwater Zen Center, like when it first started. Um, I originally started study with Jitsudo and Cheta, and then now Shishin Roshi and Shinko Roshis are my teachers. But it was really great because I had not done the Gate of Sweet Nectar in many, many years. And so I just keep coming back to come do that with you all. It's wonderful. So thank you.
That's so awesome. Our cousin Lisa. Nice to have you. Man, it's so nice to see everybody. I know this is kind of cheeseball, but I really like this. Can we just do this real quick where like everybody unmutes at the same time and just says a big hello and good morning? One, two, three.
Hello,
Hello, good
Hey.
morning.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
You.
I love that so much. I don't know why. Hearing all the voices. Um, so I don't know if everybody saw this, but about a couple weeks ago, the leadership circle sent out something to the Sangha that we put this on our website as well. But basically, we just kind of shared a link in our efforts to kind of investigate and really look at racism, systemic racism, a culture and society which some of us may use the language is built on white supremacist culture or white body supremacist culture. So I'll just share this really quick. Sorry, just so you guys can see. Um, Sorry, I thought I had this all queued up. So if you go to our website, which is here, and then you go down to the bottom, we put out this little statement. Sweetwater Zen Center is dedicated to doing our part to understand and dismantle patterns of systemic racism and white supremacy in ourselves, our center, greater community, and throughout the world. To that end, the Leadership Circle would like to offer this link that spells out in comprehensive detail the many insidious ways white supremacy manifests in society and individuals alike. So this is where the link takes you. Can everybody see that? Yeah. And it just kind of goes through this list of attributes, qualities of culture, society that seem to, the link is really about white supremacy and racism in America. But I think the reason why we liked it so much and why we wanted to officially share it is that it really just kind of addresses power dynamics in general, keeping any kind of uh, subordinate or marginalized groups down, whether it's white supremacy in America or whether it's, tribal oppression somewhere else. It's just kind of a very universal, kind of all encompassing way at looking at how we separate and how we hold people down and how we discourage inclusion. And just in general, I think, if you go through that list of things, it's just really kind of plain old dharma, right? How are we oppressing ourselves as well? How are we creating suffering, just in general? So I think it's just a really, even though it is in the context of, specifically, um, you know, racial dynamics in America, and some of the items might be pretty like European descent specific, but I think in general they're pretty broad. So what I wanted to do today was just kind of go through each one of those things and just kind of quickly talk about them and how they kind of relate to our practice as Zen Buddhists, my life and our individual lives and how they kind of manifest there. But also, I think it's important that as we look at these things, and there are a lot of, it's a long list, so we don't have to like remember or write down every single thing, and you can always go back to the website and check it out again. But I think it's really nice the way they set it up, and the way to practice with these things is kind of the way that we practice with the precepts, right? We do precept study here at Sweetwater, and what we always say is that they're not rules, right? These aren't like rigid things. So as you'll see, each thing on the list is basically describing what would be a toxic pattern that keeps these kind of oppressive systems in place. But it's not saying we should never do this. This is wrong, so don't ever do it. Because life doesn't work like that, right? Life is fluid, life is unpredictable. And we'll talk a lot about the three tenets coming up, but this first tenet of not knowing is so crucial as we work with these things, whether it be this list of things we're about to talk about, or the precepts, or the koans, or the tenets themselves, whatever it is, really coming from a place of like, I don't know, always revisiting with that kind of fresh, spring like mind, right? Suzuki Roshi always talks about the beginner's mind. So, with each of these things we talk about, and as I practice with them, and as we all practice with them into the future, really important to always bring that beginner's mind and just realize how fluid they all are. So I'll just kind of like go through each one of the bullet points that they talk about as kind of helping to sustain an oppressive culture. So the first one is perfectionism. I certainly know this one well, right? This idea that everything has to be just right and perfect, and I can't sleep and I can't take care of myself until it's perfect. And the way they talk about it, which I think is really interesting, is that that kind of culture encourages like finding flaws, right? It focuses on what's wrong and seeks to like change it right away. And they use this great language where in that kind of perfectionist mentality, making a mistake becomes being a mistake. And if someone on your team or someone in your family or someone in your work or whatever it may be makes a mistake, then they start becoming identified with that mistake and they're a problem. And I think we can obviously see that that can be pretty dehumanizing and pretty, not working towards harmony and inclusion, that's for sure. So it reminds me of a great koan where this monk goes to one teacher and he gives his presentation of, what is Buddha nature? And the teacher's like, yes, that's great. Good answer. And then he goes to another teacher and he gives the same expression and same exact thing. And that teacher says, mistake. And there's a lot there, and the koan is very rich. But one, important part about that koan is the importance of embracing mistakes, right? Mistakes are good. We want mistakes. Mistakes are how we grow, right? That's like a super cliche kind of practice point. But, saying it and really living it are totally different. Some of us attended this talk for the Tricycle Magazine 30th anniversary this week. We saw a talk by Zenju Manuel and Ruth King. And Zenju talked about, all of us have mentioned this already. We talked about it in council yesterday. But this kind of idea of, it's in the mud, it's in the murk, it's in the mistakes that the lotus blossom is nourished so that it can bloom. So, really embracing mistakes, almost like purposefully inviting mistakes, right? We like our children, we like our students to make mistakes so that they can learn from them, obviously. And so learning to kind of incorporate that in a grander way um, can be beautiful. And I learn that lesson all the time. I am a perfectionist for sure, and I suffer from it. and I really kind of strong arm things, and I stress out and I lose sleep and all this stuff. I, really having to think that everything needs to be just right. And, you know, the Buddha could not be clearer that everything is perfect as it is. And so trying to like force things and work and manipulate things to put them into my idea of what perfect is, I think is going to cause some problems because it has for me, that's for sure. So again, being fluid and flexible, like sometimes perfectionism is good, right? Putting in that real effort. When is that a good thing to do? And so I think of, I don't know if he's here today, doesn't look like it, but one of our residents is Devinder and his wife Hari Simran. Many of you know him, and he and I work together on this mobile shower trailer program. We bring a mobile trailer with 7 shower stalls to communities experiencing houselessness so that they can get their hygiene on. And Devinder and his wife are also perfectionists. And while I'm sure that may cause them trouble in their life as well, I really see that the detail that they've paid to getting this program up and running, when sometimes I would have been like, yeah, we can kind of forego that. No, they're like real serious about it. And, when it's in the service of others like that, I got to hand it to them. It really is quite admirable. And the smoothness that the program runs with is kind of a product of that perfectionist mentality. So, all of these things, just like the precepts, they're all just so alive and always offering different views. And so it's up to us to be constantly practicing with them and be alive with them. The next thing on the list is a sense of urgency. Got to get it done. Got to get it done. This is, ingrained in us so deeply, growing up in a capitalist society, obviously. I know I have it. I suffer from it all the time. And, it really commodifies my life. It makes me and my, what I produce is what my life is worth. And that's, a pretty shallow kind of thing. And so this sense of urgency is, it really kind of encourages exclusion, right? Because inclusion, wanting to incorporate other points of view, wanting to make it a team effort, really trying to get synergy and consensus, these are slow. There's no doubt about it. You see it at Sweetwater all the time, right? We're really trying to do this circle work and shared leadership. And Sason can tell you, I get really frustrated all the time. Um, there's a lot of work to do, and I am certainly a product of this perfectionist sense of urgency culture. And so, I get really frustrated. I'm sure we all do, when you want to share and you got to wait for emails from people and you want to make sure to get all different kind of points of view, and you're on a path, but then someone introduces a new idea and then you get off path and now we have to start from scratch. And it's slow. There's no doubt about it. But so what, right? Like just that simple, so what? It's slow is like a huge lesson to me all the time because I'm so ingrained with this like sense of urgency. Um, but it's really so healing to be working at Sweetwater and, knowing that the work that we're doing is not to get things done, not to change things and make things better as soon as possible, but to do it in a way that includes people, that really cultivates harmony, that really embraces all points of view. Even if it makes things slower, I just really, it's been really healing and nourishing for me. And so again, when is urgency good, right? Sometimes urgency is good, right? If you have emergencies, right? If there's a fire in the laundry room, urgency is great. And then, of course, we don't do it here at Sweetwater, but at a lot of other sanghas, there's an old evening prayer that you say at the end of the day. And I can't remember the whole thing, but there's a little bit in there that says, we should practice, or may we practice like our head is on fire, like we're trying to put a fire out on our head. And I don't know how much more urgent you get than that. Um, and so, what's the benefit of that? Realize the way now. We have session coming up in a week. Do it now. Don't wait until I feel better. Don't wait until it makes more sense with my schedule. And, of course, again, urgency can be toxic. So just always looking at it, right? When is it good to have this sense of urgency? When I sit down and I sit with an intensity and an urgency, I want to wake up right now. It can be very powerful. But as I said, it can also be pretty harmful. The next thing on the list is defensiveness, feeling defensive. I thought this was an interesting one. I hadn't really thought about this. Um, but it really, when you think about it, creating a culture, more broadly of being defensive, making sure that feelings aren't hurt, making sure that everyone just feels great. Um, it's kind of shielding. It's a barrier. It's not allowing myself to be vulnerable. It's afraid of looking at my shadows. And as far as power dynamics, and we're talking about systemic racism and white supremacy, um, that defensiveness can really act to protect those in power. And the slightest little disruption is immediately, met with this kind of defense as opposed to an openness. Tell me more about what you think. So that's kind of a subtle one that I haven't thought about much. And it reminds me of this koan, which I just love so much. It's such a powerful koan for me. It's long and there's a lot to it, but towards the end, there's this line that a teacher says. He says, "Up in the crystal palace, there is no one who knows." And again, that's like super rich, and we could have a whole Dharma talk just on that. But this idea of a crystal palace just stays with me all the time, just totally transparent, totally open, nothing to hide, nothing to defend against, just light, let all the light and all the dark in. Let everybody see everything. That transparency really changed my life, really transformed me. And doesn't mean it's not hard to be vulnerable. Doesn't mean that I don't still have like defense mechanisms and try to shield myself. But the more and more that I can really be a crystal palace, my life just feels so much better, and my life is more inclusive, and the people around me are just all welcome. Um, so when is defensiveness good, right? I think of power abuse, right? That's kind of a big one. Whenever there's power dynamics involved, even when you start getting into little microaggressions, right, that we talk about, it's probably good to really draw those lines and be defensive and say, you can't do that. So again, just living with these things and just really allowing them to be alive and organic. The next thing is quantity over quality. It's an interesting one. We all know about that. That's certainly a product of capitalism, right? And the way they talk about it in this link is I really like. They say that this basically prioritizes the measurable, right? So if it can't be measured, then it doesn't count. And it prioritizes content over process. And again, just like the urgency, it's more about like popping things out and what they look like as opposed to like, how did we get there? Who was involved? Who had the power in it? Who was making decisions? How were decisions being made? And so the quality of that process, I think, is important to our practice and to equity and equality in our society. And that problem we see even in Zen, even in spirituality, right? Like we have this koan curriculum, And there's about 650, 700 koans. And for those of you who are doing them, it's hard not to like really get attached to this, like, how many have I got done? How many have you got done? How quickly can I get them done? It's a little trap that's kind of set there in the Rinzai lineage. And how many people are coming to our Zen center? How many students do I have as a teacher? How are we marketing? All these, measurable aspects of spiritual life can really be an inhibition. And the more that I can, I get sucked into that for sure. I was born a Hollywood baby, right? Like that's just in my DNA. Um, and the more I can really just open to whoever is here right now, whatever koan I'm on right now, uh, my life just goes better, no doubt about it. So, sometimes focusing on quantity is good, right? How else do we share the Dharma? When is trying to reach people a good thing? When is, we think a lot about how many people we're showering when we take the showers out to these communities. We keep good track of how many we shower, how many come back. We keep stats, all the time. And of course, we want more and more people to be getting that service. So in that sense, it's good to be aware of quantity and the quality of, how well the showers are being cleaned and how, perfect the process. I mean, sorry, our showers are very clean. We use the best, COVID sanitizing. All of our stuff is extremely clean. Those showers are way cleaner than my shower at home. I'm just saying sometimes it's good to think about speed and getting people in as opposed to really focusing on the details of everything in that sense. The next thing on the list is worship of the written word. This is very interesting. And as someone who likes to fancy myself an amateur writer, I know we have some other writers in the crowd today. This is a hard one. Um, but I really see, especially maybe in like corporate culture or business culture, worship of the written word. If it's not written down, if it's not in a memo, then it doesn't count. And I'm guilty of that for sure. And they talk about on this page, they talk about, think about how many different ways information is shared. Think about how many different kinds of intelligences there are, right? I know some people that are not good writers, but are incredible speakers or have like extremely, astute observation skills, or subtlety skills, right? All these different ways that people can offer their dharma, can offer the ways that they see things. And so if it's just all about writing and books and memos and essays, then we really kind of exclude a lot of voices. So that's very powerful for me. Um, and of course, in Zen, we talk all the time about how it can't be talked about, it can't be put into words. Um, and yet, we have to, right? So that's the good part. Worship of the written word. We have to pass on our Dharma. We have to be able to express, we have to be able to communicate. Um, the sixth ancestor, Hui Neng, had his first major awakening experience by hearing the Diamond Sutra, I believe. I think it was the Diamond Sutra. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was a written word, right? And he was a huge icon in our lineage. And another thing I wanted to mention about the written word, as far as worship of the written word, that's really important as far as making policy. I know that for the past couple of years, especially when I first came in to take the staffing position, we were in this huge move to really put all of our policies down in writing and to get things really clear. And I think that was a great idea, to really have, when it comes to things like having renters and having grievance policies, and you're working with pets around the property, it's all kinds of safety and liability things. It's good to really worship that written word and make sure that every sentence is as clear as can be, right? So, time and place for everything. The next thing on the list is there's only one right way. right? That's a big thing, especially in workplaces, right? The people in power say how it's supposed to be, and if you don't get in line, if you don't do it exactly that way, then you're just plain wrong. And again, this may expedite things, this may streamline things, but it really excludes people and it excludes opportunities that I may have to grow. Um, and of course, this makes me think of the Buddha's, ultimate teaching. I want to say it was his dying words, but I can't attest to that for sure. I can't promise that. But I think one of his ultimate teachings was he told his students, like, don't follow me. Don't listen to me. Like, you have to find this out for yourself, right? That's a major Zen trope, right? You have to, it's like drinking water and knowing whether it's hot or cold for yourself, right? So to say that there's one kind of way really misses the point, right? There's, at any given time right now, 7 billion different ways to do things. Um, and, I think one of the reasons that we're here right now and that the Dharma, at least our lineage, has thrived as it has is because I'm sure many of you know, but Maizumi Roshi, the guy who brought our lineage to America, Seisen's teacher, Maizumi Roshi apparently was very clear with Seisen and all of her Dharma siblings that you have to make this your own. I'm going to teach you the Japanese way. I'll teach you what I know. But he was so flexible. Like, just imagine that. Imagine you take, I don't know, with the internet, there's not much that everybody has, but just imagine you take something American, you take country music to, uh, I don't know, some tucked away country that may have never heard country music before, Azerbaijan. And, can you imagine showing them country music and then saying, but you know what? Like, use your own instruments, use your own lyrics, make country music your own. Like, what flexibility that is, right? Especially the lineage he was carrying is thousands of years old. And to have that compassion and that understanding to say, but you got to make it your own way. It's just so beautiful and, just feels right. So, people ask me a lot, what would Zen say about such and such? What does Zen say about work? What does Zen say about relationships? And I always tell them, like, I have no idea. I can tell you what I would say. I can tell you what Seisen might say. That's kind of the Dharma I've received. But Zen really has this flexibility that there are very few things that you can say, Zen says this about that. That's not really what this is about. It's about you knowing right now what this is about. So there's not one right way, there's just my way right now. Um, the next thing on the list is paternalism. Paternalism, I think they're referring to like patriarchal top down power hierarchies, which, as you all know, we are seriously working against here at Sweetwater. We are really deeply trying to develop this circle structure or shared leadership. Um, and I think that's pretty clear once you have, if you're working from a top-down model where individuals are responsible for blame or credit, you really promote individualism. You discourage working in teams. It's really kind of um, it's about me. It's about getting power and who's making decisions, right? So I think that's pretty clear. And once we go through all of these, there's a lot, and so they all just kind of sounding like each other, and they really kind of form a really kind of whole. That's why I like this so much. And at the same time, paternalism, patriarchy, vertical power. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes you need a leader. Sometimes someone's got to take charge. Um, because as Sweetwater, we're trying to do this circle shared leadership thing. And at the same time, we're a super urban center where everybody has a life and jobs and kids and other responsibilities. I can't tell you how many times members and residents have said to me, I don't want to do the circle work. I just want you to tell me what to do. Like, this would be a lot easier on me and make my practice easier and make my time here easier if you would just like tell me what's up. I hear that. Um, I think we're still going to really fight for this horizontalization of power structure. But I think that's important. And I think it's important to stay vigilant to people's needs. And if people's needs are that, I can't handle this right now, I just need a leader to kind of like steer for a minute, I think that's important to listen to. The next thing is either or thinking. It's either good or bad, black or white. There's no flexibility. You're either my way or the highway. There's very little openness to alternatives. There's no like both and thinking, right? That would be the alternative, both and, as opposed to either or. And this is perfect three tenets work, right? The three tenets: not knowing, bearing witness, loving action. That's totally, that's how you get around either or, I think, right? Be open, not knowing. It's not about just this or just that. It's like, who knows what's possible? So just, totally letting go, being fresh, beginner's mind. Who knows what could happen, and just bear witness. And then, of course, it's good. Either or thinking is good when we're talking about drawing boundaries. Those of us who are on the transmission path, we at Sweetwater will have to take a course in power abuse and boundaries. And it's so important, and it's done such good healing work for our lineage because of some of the power abuse that has gone down. And one of the main things that you learn first is that you got to make an either or boundary in a lot of cases. Like, you can do this, you can't do that. And so in that case, either or could be good. The next one is power hoarding. This just kind of echoes a lot of other things. Not sharing power, thinking power is a zero sum game, right? If I give my power up, that means I have less. I think that might be kind of delusion. If anything, if you share the power, if I empower more people, uh, it's just stronger in general. I may have less like dictating power, I guess, but the power of our movement, the power of our action is so much stronger. Um, and this is interesting when they talk about power hoarding, is that an aspect of power hoarding is that those in power deny that they have the power. Isn't that interesting? It's kind of anti-intuitive, but it makes so much sense. And I've caught myself so many times, I'm not really powerful. I don't feel like I have any power. Um, when in fact, in whatever situation it is, I do. And that kind of denial, think about it, because that's really subtle, and that really applies to me. That denial is actually working to perpetuate that power structure. I don't know what you mean. How could you say that? I'm not empowered. And so, kind of a part of dismantling that power hoarding is to actually embrace the power that I do have in any given situation. When you may think that you're powerless and you think you're not listened to, take a look and see, like, actually, if I'm honest about my power, then we really have a transparent situation and we can actually look at the power structure as it is. Um, so, when is power hoarding good? Um, when we have children, right? I think we want our parents to have all the power in certain situations, right? I think that's probably a good thing for teaching our children well. And I was thinking, like, maybe just kind of in any situation where I may be responsible for safety, just real basic, plain safety. I would want a lifeguard at the beach to power hoard. It's probably a good idea, especially for someone like me who is scared of swimming. The next one is fear of open conflict. This, I think, goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Scared of vulnerability, defensiveness, going back to the Crystal Palace, right? We want to be open, we want to be vulnerable. Um, this page where these things are from, there's this really interesting theme where a lot of these are kind of aimed at like not hurting people's feelings. And they really introduced this idea that maybe hurting each other's feelings is a good thing. Maybe really getting into this mud that Zenju was talking about, that our chant talks about. May we exist in muddy water with purity like the lotus. Maybe it's good to, be uncomfortable in a real way with your coworkers, with your family, with the police, with your lawmakers, to really allow discomfort and hurt, right? Open hurt that's approached with love, not blame or shame, but love of vulnerability and transparency. So I just, that's really hard for a lot of us. And I really encourage myself and all of us to look at how trying to stay away from confrontation is actually just perpetuating toxic power dynamics. And of course, it could be good, right? This kind of evasion of conflict is good for like short-term harmony, and sometimes it's not necessary to go there, right? If you are at somebody's dinner party and maybe you're just a guest and these aren't deep relationships, maybe that's not the time to get into open conflict. Um, just a few more. I'll go really quick. I know it's getting late. Individualism, we talked about that. Only I can fix it. Self-reliance, that really discourages teamwork, and it really kind of excludes other points of view. Progress means bigger or more. That's the next one. Again, that's measurable things as opposed to the quality of things, the process of things. That makes me think of the koan where Manjushri is walking along with the Buddha, I think, and Manjushri points to a blade of grass and he says, "This is a perfect temple." Or the Buddha says, "We should build a temple." And Manjushri points to a blade of grass on the ground and says, "Here is your temple. It's just perfect." The idea of growing the Sangha, we need a bigger temple, a better temple, more people coming. That's all, that's all up here. That's all ego and, part of this kind of measurable thing. When really, wherever we are right now, whoever's with us is the perfect Sangha, is the perfect temple. And of course, aspiration, growth, those are good things too. So when is that bigger, more mentality actually helpful? And the last two, objectivity. That's a big one, right? So thinking that there is an objective truth, there's one right way, um, can be very limiting and very restricting. And of course, objectivity is good, like with science, like vaccines for coronavirus, right? That kind of objective truth can be healing for the entire world as well. So really working with that flexibility and that beauty of science. How do those live together? How are those alive together? And the last one is a right to comfort, right? So that goes back to the vulnerability. And again, I encourage you all to read this page because they just go into a little more detail about how this kind of being polite, protecting each other, protecting the ego, avoiding conflict, how that can really just shut people out, and just be counterproductive for my own growth. Um, and again, drawing boundaries, feeling safe, these are good things too. So in that sense, maintaining comfort and safety is a good thing. So that's our list there. I know it's long, I know it's a lot, but I encourage you all to go to the website and take a look and just see how all of these things not only perpetuate systemic racism and separation on a societal level, but just in my own life as well. So with that, I will ask if there's any comments or questions.